Okay guys, in this video, what we're going to cover is your basic pulling movement. So this will include the likes of your pull-ups, any sort of rowing movement, any sort of pull-down movement, and pull-over movement as well. The exercise that we're going to use for an example in this movement is a barbell row. We don't really need to go into specific exercises for this because you have a whole other library of walkthroughs of every exercise anyway. So go check those out if you want to actually check out a certain exercise. But this, we're just covering the basic movement pattern of a pulling movement. Now, most people when they're doing a pulling movement, if they're new to training, they don't usually focus on their trunk. They don't usually focus on their back, on their shoulders. All right. So if I'm doing like a barbell row, when they're down here, they're not kind of using their shoulders as much. They're more using their arms, and it becomes like a bicep curl almost, okay, or like a drag curl, and you don't want that. You want to be using your back. Your arms are just an extension of the movement. All right. If your arms weren't there, all right, you could still train your back using your shoulders. Okay. So what I mean by that is you can retract your shoulders. So imagine there's like a Coke can in between your shoulder blades, and you're squashing them back, and then you depress them, you drive them down. Remember we covered this before with hip hinge work, like you're doing a deadlift. Same thing with a row, and here's why. So again, I'm just going to safely lift this off like you would at the start of like a rack pull, like we covered in the hip hinge video. If you haven't checked that out, go check it out. So I'm just going to step back, and same idea, right? I'm just going to drop down, and I'm going to row from here. Now most people do this, who are new to training, by the way. So they'll do this. That's all bicep work. All right. Now, what I want to do is retract and depress my shoulders. So I'm squeezing them back like a shrug, and then I'm driving them towards my hip, and then from there I want to row. And that's all back. Notice the difference. Instead of this, it's this. And I'm not worrying about lifting the bar up. I'm driving the bar back towards my hip. All right, so that's what I want you doing in terms of a pulling movement. A little bit out of breath here, just from all those reps. If I was doing a pull-up, if I was doing a seated row, exact same thing. It's just I'm pulling from a different angle, okay? By the way, barbell row, if I'm down here holding the barbell, this is the exact same movement you're in if you're doing a seated row. Let's say I was sitting down. If you just flip me the way I am now, say my feet were planted on the frame of the seated row, same movement, okay? If I'm doing a pull-up, again, if I'm hanging up there, I'm retracting, depressing my shoulders, and I'm pulling up, but I'm like squeezing back. Your arms are just an extension of the movement for any pulling movement. So always start with shoulders first, okay? So after you get your grip right, get your feet right and everything else, it's shoulders. It's all in the shoulders, okay? Your scapula. Retract, depress, squeeze back.